Brett Harris, the formidable Brett Harris. Welcome. This is
Thank you, Matt.
one of our early editions of Breaking Ground, a podcast from Dash. You and I go back a long way, which
Yes,
I'm happy to say. Um, you've been in the real estate business for a while. Can you share with us how you got to real estate, why real estate, and how you got there?
So I was living in Los Angeles in the 90s, and I was in the entertainment business. We were representing writers, directors, and actors. And I found that on the weekends, instead of reading scripts, which was my homework, I would be driving up into Hollywood Hills looking at houses. And I wasn't licensed at the time. I just had a fascination of architecture and design, and kind of just really educated myself onto the onto the business. I kind of really wanted to know why this house was worth 5 million, the one across the street was worth 10 million. What did it mean to have an open floor plan? What did it mean to have Italian kitchens? Why was the view paramount? Stuff like that. So I would go into the hills and I would register onto a Caldwell banker, I guess, Caldwell broker, open house, and they asked me who I was with, and I said, "Oh, I guess I'm with Keller Williams today." Everyone in LA's got a story. So I signed in with Keller Williams. I didn't have a card. I left. I inspected the house. They had kind of educated me, right? So they're giving me the tour. They're telling me what everything great about the house is. And then I left with that knowledge, and I went up the street and went to another one. I did that all day, every day for Saturday and Sunday for about a year. And then I got licensed in LA, and that's how it all came about.
And How'd you get to South Florida?
I'm born and raised in Miami Beach.
Yeah,
And
I actually knew that, but what was the impetus to bring you back? Instead of doing real estate in California, you chose to come back home. Why?
yeah, 0506, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. I had surgery. I had a remission. I had a surgery in Irvine, and I was starting my real estate business. And my dad said, "You should really start it in Miami. This is where your contacts are." Even though I had really great contacts in LA,
Yeah.
from being there for 10, 12 years, he said you should come back home, and I did. And during real estate school in class one night, I was doing my first deal, and that ended up being a $17 million deal.
So that was around 2005, you said?
Yeah, 5 6.
So
Oh,
that was
506.
really one of the more exciting and robust eras. You hit it just about right as we came out of the really early 2000s and kind of it began, I guess, 02, 03, and then really ramped up in 05 considerably. That's your recollection as well, right?
It went pretty good. It was pretty strong, and then it all came crashing down pretty fast.
Yeah. So you're as good an individual, maybe one of the better ones for me to ask what's really going on in South Florida residential real estate today, Brett.
I think South Florida, what's happening around the country is not really indicative of what's happening here. We're kind of an anomaly. We're kind of on our own little bubble. Everyone always asks, how's it going? How's it doing? This market is very strong. This market is very active. I mean, there has been some slowdown because the interest rates are at 7%, and not everyone can afford what they could afford a year ago, sub 10 million. But in the luxury space where I operate in, most of those guys are still pretty good, if not even wealthier than they were a year ago. So most of these guys are, they're writing checks for the 15, 20, $30 million stuff. They're not really looking to leverage and get a mortgage on their properties. So that ultra luxury stuff is not really super affected. It's really the sub $10 million stuff, which is what a lot of the market is. It's getting hurt a little bit. Instead of 3 million, or someone could have afforded a home for 5 million at 3%, now they can afford a home for 3 million at 7%.
Yeah.
So it's put a little strain on that market. Fortunately, there's a lot of people still moving here from Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, New York, and they're coming with a lot of cash. They're selling an asset for 5 to 10 million that they bought 5 years ago. So they have a lot of liquidity and they have a lot of cash to spend on homes. So there's a lot of stuff that's trading quite quickly. If it's anything that's been renovated, or if it's new, or if it's just nice and move-in ready, it's selling. And if it needs a lot of work, it's sitting,
It's sitting.
or I'm buying it. never
Is
good for
there
you.
enough of a labor force for these kinds of renovations that's necessary? Because with all of the new high end construction condominiums, I hear from time to time how the access to the trades, credible trades, is really challenging now. So if something is a 6 month renovation, all of a sudden it's a 15-month renovation. Is that what you're experiencing as well?
Well, I'm also a real estate investor. I own a lot of properties. So I think the answer is twofold. Yes, I think we have a shortage in quality labor. B, there's a lot of people coming in with a lot of experience with their own labor force, people that have been in business 10, 20, 30, 40 years, that have people working for them for a very long time, and they have very dedicated and committed people to working for them. So you'll see like a Todd Glazer building these, $120 million houses in 8 months. You'll see him
Sure.
put up you'll see him put up a 20,000 square foot home in 15 months. So guys like that, are few and far between, but even the other top builders have their built-in workforce, and in maybe 15 months, they're 2 years for a home.
Sure.
Um, I've got my house that you should have been 6 months. It's going to take us a year, and I've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of micromanaging. It's very labor intensive. It's taking up a lot of my time. It's taking up a lot of my time away from my general, which is my main business. But now I think this side business, this side hobby, is probably going to end up being my main business moving forward. I enjoy
So
it.
let me ask you. One of the distinctive components of your career is as an independent off-market agent as well. Define that for me, and how does one get to such a rarefied position?
So what I do is I kind of hunt down the people that are going to get divorced, or there could be a death in the family, or someone's moving out of state, and I'll get a phone call, and they may not be ready tomorrow, but in 6 months or a year, they'll be ready. So what I'll do is I will tap into my buyer network, and I'll say, hey, there's an opportunity here to buy X house for X amount of dollars, let's say in Golden Beach, for $10 million. And the good news is you can close in 6 months, you can close in 9 months. They need some time to move out anyway. They've been there 35 years. So it's really about massaging the deal. A lot of these sellers that have been in these homes for a long, long time, it's 90% of their wealth, and they're going to take that money and they're going to go retire, to wherever they go, Montana, North Carolina, Colorado. So they need time to move out. Not everyone can move out in 30 days, especially if you've been there 30, 40, 50 years. And growing up here, they're friends with my family, my parents, and
That's nice.
everyone
So
else. So
so
we're
what's
getting,
really
getting the
what
calls.
so what to me what's also really interesting because I know you well and your career is well distinguished that not just being available for these off market deals, but you also assist your clients in renovations and interior design and on and on and on, which is such a complicated exercise as well. Correct?
So it's very complicated in South Florida. I think it's probably the most complicated landscape to work in. And I'm sure I've heard this from all my clients. We own 7 houses. We've built 4 of them in Cabo and Arizona. And we have 3 townhomes in New York. And we've built in the Hamptons. And when they get to Florida and they really want a project because they're looking forward to doing it on their own, they hit a roadblock, and it's really discerning and disappointing. And unfortunately, that's just the landscape of South Florida. It's very hard to navigate the red tape, the bureaucracies of the zoning department, and the city of Miami and Miami Beach, and they're very, very, very understaffed. They're underpaid, and there's a lot of business going on in South Florida with this quasi building boom, and they just can't handle the influx. And if someone comes down from Arizona, I had a client and he thought he was going to build a house. I tried to sway him away from building,
Yeah.
but some of these guys just can't help themselves. So if land is 20 million, they can build for 20 million, they earn for 40, and it's worth 70. They see a profit there, and sometimes no matter how much money they've made, they can't help themselves from creating some kind of value from them, their family. And then there's other people that just are adamant about not building. They're too busy. I sold a big house to Sam Nazarian from SB, and he was building 26 hotels at the time, and he just didn't have the bandwidth and the time to build a house. So we found him a home that had just been completed, and he went in there and gave put his own DNA on it for his family, and it's a gorgeous home in Gables Estates. But most people don't don't want to build, and when they do start building, they all say the same thing. It's really difficult in South Florida.
Yeah.
Probably the most challenging out of any city they've ever built in.
So let me go back in history a little bit. I vaguely remember in I don't know 2007 8. Weren't you involved with the Bee Gees, one of the Gibb family members, in either acquiring or selling them a house? And you developed a relationship with them. Is that correct?
I grew up with the family. They grew up in Miami Beach. All three brothers lived on North Bay Road. Barry's oldest son was one of my best friends, and still to this day is one of my closest friends. So there was a lady in real estate school that had a very wealthy sister married to a billionaire hedge fund guy in New York. And she called me in school and said, my sister's going to buy this house. And I said, okay, I will work on it. I'll do my best. Long story short, we got a hold of Robin Gibb, who had moved to London at the time. They kind of weren't really in the mood to sell, and then they kind of flirted with it for a second. So the lady flew down with her husband and the designer from Paris, and they actually never got a deal done, and that took about 5 months. And then 4 months after that, a friend of a friend said I would buy that house for X amount of dollars. And I said, well, I think they may be ready to sell soon. And then we revisited it, and that took another 6 months. So from beginning to end, from the time I initiated the initial phone call, it was about a year to get that deal done. And then they moved back to London, and an extensive rehabilitation, almost quasi knockdown started. And that
Yeah.
took almost a year and a half. And that person still lives in that house today.
Did you always have access to VIP behind the behind the stage,
Uh,
all access passes in that era with the Bee Gees?
You know what? I think it's just connecting the dots, usually leveraging relationships, not being scared to call in a favor here and there. A lot of it happened in LA, to tell you the truth. And a lot of my LA friends were now clients, and the clients give me referrals. And if you do a good job for somebody, you get another referral. And that's kind of how it just works, that this is a 99% referral based business. I'm not going to go to the bar at the St. Regis and meet someone who just flew in from Dubai and wants to buy a $10 million house. It
Yeah,
just I mean, it could happen. It has happened, but it doesn't happen as much as a referral. So
I would think so. So your travels are far and wide with the family and to your buddies or associates and whatnot. How do you attract these whales? I mean, how do you network to a place where it's so competitive, even at the most rarefied prices? It's challenging. I can only imagine to go after a buyer kind of has been there and done that and can afford a 20, 30, $40 million house. That must be very, very challenging to be able to maneuver those deals.
it is challenging. It's getting harder and harder with the amount of people that are operating in the luxury space. There's probably 10 really good agents, and
Yeah, sure. So the question was is that trying to discover what the secret source may be, Brett, as far as accessing individuals that play in a game in the 20, 30, 40 plus $1 million residences. How you unearth and pursue those kinds of deals.
I think you just have to have access to really good relationships. You have to be very persistent and consistent, and you have to have really good listings. And I think from really good listings come good people, whether they're coming with another agent or not. You get to see who's coming through town. So I have done deals with other agents where I was showing them a listing, and they said, this isn't for me, but I'm looking for this particular type of home. And I said, oh, I just happen to have a friend who's selling it. He's up the road. Let's go see if we can see it. And they had another agent, but I'm happy to always work with other agents. And we ended up doing that deal and splitting the commission. Um, 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing. So I'm always a team player with other agents at different companies, and I'm working with a lot of different people right now and a lot of different deals, and that's kind of like the best way to make it work, right? Like take a little piece of a big pie, then a bigger piece of nothing.
So given your career and the experience, and it must be 25 plus years now, what advice would you give to a relatively new agent coming into the business? You know, they say that the bar is very low to become a real estate agent. However, to become a very successful residential real estate agent, the bar is very high. What would be your counsel to these youngsters coming into the business today or trying to?
So in any business, whether it's pharmaceutical sales, whether it's real estate sales, whether it's, you know, it could be any kind of sales business, I would team up with some of the best agents you can in South Florida, and I would just shadow the office, shadow anybody and anybody they can shadow. It's a free internship. They're not going to get paid, but
Right.
what they will learn is they will learn the basic lingo. They'll learn some contracts if they want to. They'll learn part of negotiations if they want to. It's just however involved they want to be. If they want to work on Saturdays and show up to an open house, I mean, it's really limitless, right? So once you get in with one of the top companies, you kind of focus on an area that you're interested in, right? So if you're interested in rentals, you focus on rentals, become an expert there. If you're interested in waterfront, you can focus on waterfront, become an expert there. In any area that you decide to pick, I think you should become an expert in one area before moving on to the other. All the new guys try to do everything at one time, and they don't do any of it really great. So they lose a lot of clients. And they also are scared to ask for help because they see, oh, I'm going to make $100,000 on this deal. I don't want to split it with anybody. Meanwhile, the young guys that are actually looking for help and leaning on experienced people, splitting it 50-50 for the first few 4 or 5 deals until they're really comfortable and have the ground under their feet running. Those are the kind of guys that are going to succeed in the long term. So just try to team up with some really great people that are willing to have some young, aggressive, hungry people around, and you're going to learn a lot very fast. It's a low learning curve, it is, but to be the top 1%, it's hard to do a lot of big deals and stay relevant.
No, I know it's a real commitment. So in all of the deals, you need to share one or two really juicy stories. I mean, I recognize that the probably the more expensive the deal, the more complicated it gets, the more crazy the characters are and the players in the deal, and from buyers to lawyers to financial folks, accountants, and on and on and on. Maybe you can share a story or two about how goofy it can get.
It can get pretty goofy on every single big deal. It gets pretty goofy. It gets pretty crazy. But I can share a story in 2009 when we were looking for a large property for a very wealthy guy out of Los Angeles. We were going after Shaquille O'Neal's property that had been on and off the market for about 4 years. So I had went to the house. I had personally met with Shaquille O'Neal, and he had checked out. The furniture was gone. The clothes were gone. He had been through 3 different agents. 4 deals fell apart on him. He moved back to Orlando, and he said, it was listed, I think, at 30 million, and then at this point in time, I think I had him down to $16 million. It was almost two and
Wow.
a half acres on Star Island, 340 feet of frontage. It was a spectacular piece of real estate. So I called my client, and he had been looking at it. He had sent his contractors down in the weeks before. He knew exactly what it was. And I said, you got to move fast. There's other people circling it. It was like '09, right? Like, the market was quiet.
Yep.
He said, there's no other buyers. I'm the guy. Offer him 15 million. We'll close in 1 week. And I said, I'm not going back to the guy. He came down from 20 to 16. I shook his hand. That's the number. If you want it, you can buy it. He says, I'm not going to buy it. 2 weeks later, Vladisov drone and bought it for 16 million, exactly the number that we had. I actually might even paid a little more, 16.5.
Yep.
And he was doing also a very quick closing. And word got out that Vlad had bought the house and was doing a quick closing. And my client caught wind of it and couldn't believe that after he searched who this Vladislav Dronin was, basically the billionaire Donald Trump from Russia, he
Yep.
said, call the guy back and offer him 24 million. And I said, you just didn't want to pay 16, but now you want to pay 24. So I actually called the agent back who represented Vlad and said, look, we circled it, we missed it, my client still wants it. Will you guys flip it for 24 million? And the agent laughed at me and said, thanks, we've had a lot of those calls, and My client has a lot of money. My client knows exactly what he's buying, and he's not selling. So that was as hard as you work on some of the deals that you see gets closed. A lot of deals go behind the scenes that don't get closed, and that would have been a pretty big deal at that time. He still has one of the largest properties on Star Island, and it's worth north of 100, 125 million. And from what I'm getting, he's still not a seller.
Well, wild. Let me ask you a question, Brett. If you can you hear me okay, Brett?
I hear you perfectly.
Excellent. So I want to pivot a little bit and shameful plug about Dash. So in this world today, as you know, Dash showcases pre and new constructions and only pre and new constructions, and that it's really taken off in a fabulous, robust way. What tools, what research tools, obviously prior to Dash, um, do you use or were you using to kind of access what's new stuff that's going on in the market?
I tell you that the systems that have been in place for the last 10 or 15 years, 20 years, as far as I've known, are so archaic. It's so embarrassing that these billions and trillions of dollars of real estate get transacted with like the most, you know, archaic tools, in existence. I don't know when the AI is going to come over and take over the business, but between Dash and some other new stuff that's coming out, I'm sure it's going to be very sooner than later. But yeah, I'd go. I did what everyone else did. I went to Zillow, went to Realtor.com. I used the MLS system. I kind of, I used my own website for search engine tools. If I had a client that wanted to see something really fast, I did a quick search tool on my own site. um, you know, but that's mostly single family houses. What Dash does is Dash gives you all the data you need for anything coming up or in regards to pre-construction and new construction. So you don't, it takes the guessing game out, right? So,
Yeah.
what's coming up on the ocean, what's coming up in Edgewater, what's coming up in Brickell. You can do a cost comparative analysis, what's the selling price per foot. So it gives someone that has a budget of, 2 to 4 million and they want to be on Brickell, it siphons out all the garbage and it just gives them the 2 to 4 buildings that are coming up in the next 24 months that they can actually go spend their time on and look at floor plans and start making an educated decision on where they're going to buy.
You said it very well, buddy. Let me ask you the following question. So it's said that life is not about what happens to you, but life is about how you respond to what's happened to you. Give me an example in your career that kind of changed you in a formidable way. Really, you pivoted or needed to pivot to get to the other side.
Well, in regards to um, purchasing my own real estate, I always found myself losing real estate deals to obviously other agents. It's a competitive business, so for every home, there's 20 really good agents going after that listing. Like at Harvard, or so there's 15,000 applications for one kid. It's competitive at any level at the top. So I find myself losing out to a lot of the top agents on other listings, and I'm now going, I'm now investing my own money into some really great land or development opportunities where I can actually control the asset class. And
Yeah.
once I can control the asset class, it brings me so much more business. It brings me so much more happiness. I'm not competing against anybody else, right? So I own the asset, I own the home, and I can dictate what I sell it for. I can create the market. I'm a market maker on this type of plus $10 million market. So this house I bought, for 6, I'm listing it for 12. I bought something on Normandy for 5. Everyone laughed at me when I called all my friends. I said, "And you want to invest with me? I need some money. Do you want to invest me?" I said. They said nothing's ever sold over 5 million. You're crazy. Don't do it. Don't do it. I did it, and 6 months later, I sold it for 10.5 million. And
It
then they
takes
said, "Find me. Tell us about your next deal." Everyone's a Monday morning quarterback, right? So
So if you were to talk to the Brett Harris of 30 years ago, what do you think you would tell him in terms of um, his career choice? What he should or should not do? If you were talking to yourself 30 years ago,
he should do whatever he's passionate about. That's it. Whatever. If he wants to be a surf instructor in Costa Rica, he should go to Costa Rica and be a surf instructor. If he's passionate about real estate, get your boots on the ground, get your hands dirty, and learn about everything: ROI, NOI, every investment class you can talk, triple net leases, uh, luxury residential, short term, long term rentals. I mean, get in it. If you're going to get in it, be very good at it, enjoy it, and it'll be a great career. Whatever you decide to do, enjoy it. Because if you don't enjoy it, it doesn't matter how much money you make. You
If
really
you
have
are,
to
if
thoroughly enjoy it. I'm here on Saturdays. I'm here on Sundays. I eat, breathe it, sleep it. I love these houses. I love these projects. I love the characters that are involved. I love the challenges. Today we had 40 O-rings. I had to go and trim the lights. They came from California. We waited 3 days. I had 5 electricians. They came the wrong size. We got to send them back. So it never ends. It's all day, every day.
if you weren't a real estate star, what do you think an alternative career might have been for you?
Probably a lifeguarding you know Hawaii or somewhere. I don't know. It'd be outside. It would be somewhere in sales. I'm a people person. I'm hypersocial, so I like to be around people. It would be in some kind of sales capacity. I'm not sure what. This sales is houses. It's condos, it's houses, it's land, it's a dream. I sell a lifestyle, right? So
Yeah.
it just so
Yeah.
happens that I'm selling people houses that they can raise their kids in, and I go there 2 years later, and the kids are grown up, and we play tennis, we play paddle, and then it's just it's cool watching people grow into their own homes. It's really nice.
Yeah,
I bought my house in 2010, and I'll never sell it. It's just not for sale. People call me all the time and offer me a bunch of money, and I said it's like a piece of art in the closet. It's just not for sale. I had a client with the Warhol once, and it was like $50 million. I said, "What'd you pay for it?" He said, "I paid 82,000." I said, "Why don't you sell it?" He goes, "It's not for sale. I don't own it." I go, "What do you mean you don't own it? It's right there in the closet. I see it." He goes, "I don't own it. I don't know what you're talking about." I thought it was pretty cool. He's like, he doesn't. He just. It's not even. It doesn't even exist in his world. He
yeah.
knows he has it. He knows what it's worth. It's just not for sale. It's pretty cool.
That's it, buddy. I mean, I can't thank you enough for your time today, Brett. I know you're in 12 places at the same time. Greatly appreciated. Jake, you want us to stay on the phone for 3, 4, 5 seconds to make sure that it's all uploaded?